I think we did a lot of things right in the weight room. The big thing is when you microdose, you never ruin the next day, and and that is so important to feed the cats. Is that nothing we do today can ruin tomorrow's workout. If tomorrow's important, you cannot burn the steak today. You just cannot do it.
That was Hall of Fame track and field coach Tony Holler speaking on microdosing, track and field, the weight room, and performance. You're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by SimpliFaster. SimpliFaster is an online athletic performance technology shop distributing items such as the Freelap timing system, GymAware, K-Box, 1080 Sprint, and the Speed Mat. I've gotten many of these items from SimpliFaster and can confidently say that they make today's best training technology available to everybody. The Freelap timing system has revolutionized both my practices and my athlete assessments, allowing me to look at the 10-meter fly capability of dozens of athletes in a matter of seconds. It is wireless, compact, portable, and incredibly versatile. The K-Box and 1080 Sprint are fantastic tools for any coach looking to build speed, agility, and implement training scenarios that go beyond the traditional weight room. The 1080 Sprint is being used by great coaches training some of the fastest sprinters in the world, and it truly represents high-performance speed training. I can personally attest that SimpliFaster's customer service is second to none. Christopher at SimpliFaster responds quickly to queries, and anyone who makes a purchase from SimpliFaster is in good hands. If you want to acquire some of the best high-tech training equipment available, stop by SimpliFaster.com. That's simply with an I, faster.com. They are the future of coaching technology. Welcome to another episode of the Just Fly Performance Podcast. Thanks for being here today. I'm your host, Joel Smith. Today, we welcome back on the show Tony Holler. He is a Hall of Fame track and field coach from Plainfield North High School, who I first met at Track Football Consortium, which I want to say about 5 years ago. And Tony's Feed the Cat system for his high school sprinters is sweeping the country. It is an absolute breath of fresh air to the otherwise somewhat, I shouldn't say somewhat, the stagnant 8x200 over distance type mentality that really tends to make kids hate track and field. Like my junior year of high school, it rings near and dear to me just because my junior year of high school was that. I remember we even got punished with a 16x200 in the street, like the sprinters and jumpers, not distance, like sprinters and jumpers, because we were screwing around for like a photo shoot or something. And yeah, that was rough. A lot of people just left, like they just drove away, and I was like, I did it, but I didn't jump very well that year, needless to say. In the typical, there was like 8 or 10 200s. It's crazy. And the next year we didn't do that stuff, and I started doing hurdling, which I think turned out really well for me, because doing the short hurdling workouts, I think I got out of doing some of that longer stuff that really wasn't feeding my system, and I jumped like 4 or 5 inches higher and did better in everything. So Tony's work is just absolutely, he's certainly not the first person to advocate for a low volume system, but his total system, the philosophy behind it, is really changing the game for so many people. And I think with anything, like, Bruce Lee, right? Like it was the philosophy that made not only the training great, but the overall system. And Feed the Cats, so really quickly too, before we get into the episode, if you missed 61, definitely listen to it. But just really revolves around low dose, high speed, high velocity, maximal sprint training, lots of rest, not spending forever at practice, making track fun, making it competitive, taking kids' times, ranking, recording, and publishing it on Twitter and social media. It's a highly motivating system that it's something that is just really something special. So training is much more than X's and O's, and environment is huge. And the training environment is something that is a huge theme of our talk today. Tony's going to talk about the Feed the Cats and stimulating dopamine. He's going to give some anecdotes on rest and training high jumpers and team sport. and just a lot of things are really put together to show why the Feed the Cat system is so powerful. One recent development, and this was a big thing that got me just thinking, and one thing we're going to focus on in the show today is Tony's going to talk about his experience with the bigger, faster, stronger strength training system, which is awesome because a lot of people will look at Tony, who is outspoken in terms of sprinters and weightlifting many times, and think that Tony hasn't been administering or been through a weightlifting program. And so he's going to chat about that and how it got him started on the rank, record, publish and power of PRs and all these universal things where I think that regardless if it's the weight room or the track or whatever you're doing, or team sport coaching basketball or football, all this stuff all ties together. So topics today, really quick, I guess traditional topics. He's going to chat about Tony's going to chat about recent lessons he's gained from Marcellus Moore, who has run 10:31 in the 100 meters as a sophomore, one of the best sprinters in the nation, what it's like to train a phenom. He's going to talk about how when kids do what they like instead of what they're forced to do, it is an absolute game changer, such a transferable element to not only track, but all elements of life. He's going to chat a little bit about bigger, faster, stronger, as I mentioned. He's going to talk about his recent speed cycle and training that was inspired by bigger, faster, stronger. He's going to talk about just the importance of stimulating dopamine through avoiding those situations where athletes will take a dopamine hit and keeping that up throughout the week. And finally, we'll chat about a little bit about X Factor training and what's been new with that and how that fits into Tony's total system. Before we get started, also, Tony has a new DVD out that is selling on Championship Productions, and it is called Feed the Cats, a complete sprint training program. So definitely head on over there and check that out. So that being said, let's get on to episode 135 of the Just Fly Performance podcast with Coach Tony Holler. All right, so Tony, if you could coach any sport besides track, and I guess you've coached football, you coached it all, right? But if someone said you couldn't coach track right now and you can't retire from coaching, is there a sport that intrigues you that you'd be like, hey, maybe I want to try my hand at this? Seems fun.
Well, it's weird that as I've gone on in my career, I've been at it for 38 years, and I'm hardly a sports fan at all now. It's really weird. The only sport that captures my attention is football on TV. And, I love college football and professional football, but I used to be a big baseball fan, and I can't sit through a game anymore. I haven't been to an NBA game in 5 years, and I don't know if I ever will go to one. I'm just, and basketball was my life growing up and everything. So, I don't even like track on TV a whole lot. I love the coaching and performance level stuff, but I'm just not much of a fan. You'll never see me in a Chicago Bears jersey. Now, as in coaching, I have a little bit of an interest. If somebody would offer me the keys to the car and let me totally run an offense and not tell me what to run and when to run it, and let me do the whole damn thing, which no head coach ever gives away the keys to the car, I think I would love to be an offensive coordinator in a good program. And then I've actually had an urge, I put so much into basketball. I was a head basketball coach for 8 years in my 20s. And, there's part of me that when I see how bad basketball is right now, it's such a dribble, shoot game that I would love to go back and coach a talented team someday. But once again, you don't just walk back into being a head basketball coach. But deep down, I still love both those sports.
Yeah, I would love to see what you would do with there was an article on SimpliFaster, maybe back when it was Freelap USA, about the speed-based football and bust out the Freelap for the different routes and things like that.
Yeah.
I imagine that'd be a huge part of what you would do then.
I would feed the cats, and it's interesting. I've written 4 feed the cats football articles, and they were really well received. And I know coaches in multiple states that are now literally saying they feed the cats, that they prioritize speed, number 1, prioritize rest, number 2, which are the 2 really deep down, the 2 fundamentals of feed the cats. And, they do things like they don't run between drills anymore because they want to do the drill fast. And it's so hard for them because football coaches are such psychos about, running between drills, or after a route, you sprint back to the, that military discipline. But, I love that the whole thing with the Feed the Cats. And also I've written a basketball article about Feed the Cats where you record, rank, and publish more to make shooting more important, and you shorten practices, and you try to play really fast in 20-second segments. Then you go get a drink, and then you come back and do it again, instead of just this constant motion. And so, yeah, I would love to implement all those things.
Yeah, I would have loved to have rank, record, and publish back when I was a high school basketball player. Just because I would have just lit up. I mean, I was so just competitive and just driven by stats and figures, always researching things. That would have been fantastic. Yeah, I'm the boat with you too with the not watching sports. I mean, I stopped watching. I feel like when I was in my early 20s, and I don't know why. I just got obsessed with other things or gained a tunnel vision for just the performance and the coaching end, right? But I went to an NBA game. And I don't watch NBA on TV except for to watch athletes move. But I went to the Bucks against the Pelicans or something. I took my dad and my brother. It was Christmas, and it was kind of it's just kind of out with the guys. I was like, oh, this will be fun. And I go and I literally I'm like, what is this? It's just you got 7-2 guys jacking up threes. Everyone's just shooting. There's no teamwork. I was like, this is like someone's playing a video game and everyone turned the 3-point shooting up to 99, and the guy who can't make a three can make a three. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm watching. Yeah, it was a trip.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. But football still is great on TV for me. That's the only thing I like.
Yeah. I don't mind if something's on. I like watching it, but I don't necessarily drive to it. But yeah, performance is awesome, and that's what we're talking about today. So I'm excited to get you back on the show, Tony. Man, last time was cool. Every time I see you at TFC, it motivates me with what you're doing. It's a breath of fresh air in the industry, and so let's get on with these typical questions, I guess you could say. But you're on about a year and a half ago. We're talking a little bit about Marcellus and working with such a phenom. You're talking about how he runs anything but loose, and how you're learning from him. But ever since then, is there any lessons you've picked up, things you're noticing in his training an elite young sprinter?
Yeah. He just turned 16, and he set the state record last year, 10:31 in the 100 meters, and we set the state record in the 4x1. We swept the sprints with him. And he was only 15 years old, 5'6", 150 with braces. So he's definitely a phenom. And I always tell people that he was a phenom a long time before he met his first good coach. I mean, those people are born. Now, having said that, I remember telling you how herky-jerky he was, and he was kind of a violent runner. And, he's really gotten smoother. He's much more consistent. His top speed is just barely improved, but he holds it so effortlessly now. And that's why we think he'll run a 46 this year in the 400, wow. And he'll win that event, the state meet as well. He's the happiest kid I've ever coached, and maybe the healthiest. He has not missed a single race in 2 years due to a soft tissue injury or, my hamstring sore or anything like that. And that's 36 high school meets. We did take him out at 200 once because he was going to have to run into a 40-mile-an-hour wind. And I didn't want to see that, and he didn't want to run it. So that's the only race he's missed in 36 meets. He has incredible ankles and feet, which Chris Corfus talks about all the time, and I'm starting to understand it more and more. He has incredible stiffness. He is the opposite of a flexible kid, but his ankle stiffness is amazing, and you can just draw straight lines down his lateral chain. He is CNS driven 100%. I think he has one of the most elite nervous systems I've ever seen. He runs more like Michael Johnson than Carl Lewis. His turnover rate's fantastic. Not exactly a poser for pictures, with the high knee stuff like Carl was. But I tell him all the time, this is funny, but, pretty much, I'm maybe once a month. I said, Marcellus, you realize that trees do not grow all the way to heaven, and that you are going to plateau someday. And it just has not happened. He goes out in the first meet and runs a 21:23 to win the 200 indoors at Texas A&M. And then the next week, he runs a 6.75 in the 60, which is U.S. #1 in high school. And he just keeps shocking me with his performances. And like I say, he's just such a happy and healthy kid. It's just I can't believe I get another 2 years with him.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that the fact that he stayed healthy, right, is such a testament to that feed the cats and the rest system. Like especially someone who's so explosive, because I think it's pretty well known and regarded the most explosive athletes are the most injury prone because it's so easy for them to blow themselves up. It's
Sure.
like how many 14-second 100-meter runners are gonna blow their hamstring? They're too slow. Once you have that machinery that's going so fast, and watching Marcellus hawk that guy down on that 4x1 video, I'll try to post, was just I watched that so many times. It's just fun.
There, it looks like a cartoon.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is the guy that he hawked ran an FAT 11.03. 11.03, and Marcellus made it look like a cartoon. It was just amazing. And yeah, to think a kid could be that good, and I think his size and his smile and all that stuff, he's just such a darling of the entire state of Illinois. People just love the kid. So we're really lucky. And I would say most of the time, phenoms are the hardest people to coach.
Yeah.
And, I think Marcellus is tied with maybe 10 other kids I've coached as being my favorite kid. So I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah. You were saying too, with the Marcellus's feet and the fact that he doesn't have high knee lift, it seemingly more and more the more I watch people is that having that really stiff ankle and the ability to kind of pop off the ground and get back down, almost like it's like you don't want the high knee lift in that situation because you just want to turn over, and to like force something, I guess, else on him probably wouldn't work so well. Or like the Carl Lewis pose, right?
Yeah, if you don't hit the ground with a big hammer, like a Carl Lewis did, then you better have great turnover, which Marcellus has. His turnover is amazing.
Yeah, right on. And do you feel like the feed the cat system too, like in terms of coaching that phenoms, being not, like you said, not so easy to coach, perhaps, like I suppose a higher volume, like a really rigid system, probably wouldn't fit well with a lot of phenomenal athletes and phenomenal spirits.
No.
Not even from a physical, but maybe even a mental or psychological perspective.
No, and as you know, I'm very careful not to take credit for anything Marcellus does. But in my mind, if he was in a Clyde Hart system, he'd be running 1060s right now. He'd be running 21:65 in the 200, and the coach would be taking a lot of credit for his great times. But he ran 20.88 for me last year in the 200, and I believe I get the question a lot, like what if you were coaching like college kids? You would up the volume then, wouldn't you? And I'm like, hell no. Feed the Cats would be fabulous for elite sprinters, and not only that, I'm not plugging myself for a college job here, but if it got out to the greatest sprinters in the nation, the way I would coach them, they would come to my school because the training makes sense, significant, and they would have fun doing it, and they'd stay healthy and happy. And I just don't see many college programs that do that.
Yeah, and I feel like it's like the fun thing that's so big. I'm really just, my mind's continually resonating. I had Jeremy Frisch on last week just talking about kids playing, giving fun, putting fun into training, and I can't think of too many things more fun for high schoolers who are doing track than the rank, record, and publish system, and even like elite athletes of any level, like guys who are like way up in the NBA, MLB. Like a lot of them aren't the hugest fans, to my knowledge, of like training hard, like that rigid, like lifting the heaviest weight, grinding. Like they want to have fun. Like talking with Milan Jovanovic too about the soccer players in Europe, like they want to compete and have fun, like those elite phenomenal players. And it just seems like Feed the Cats reciprocates that so well. It makes the art of speed a fun process.
Yeah, and I think I love the way you talk about fun but mixed in compete.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people see fun as like knee slapping, joking around fun, and what I've found with sprinters, with cats, is that they're not a whole lot of fun to coach sometimes, and their personalities are high strung and emotional sometimes, but they're really, really, really competitive, and they have fun racing somebody, or they have fun running the fastest 10-meter fly they've ever run. They have fun talking about how fast they are and having the numbers to back it up. So when we talk about having fun, that does not mean we're a loose group. We're actually having fun doing what matters.
Yeah. it makes me think about like, well, someone who's like a non-cat, I guess you could say, like someone who's kind of like that maybe 400, 800 type that's in the sprints, I guess, or whatever. Or, I mean, and I'm sure it works. Definitely, I've seen like John O'Malley's articles and things like that, and they're really good. But it's like for an athlete whose idea of fun, I don't know, is like running 8 200s ever fun? Like, at what point does that become fun? Or like, I don't know, if you think running like 2 600s really fast, if for the
Well, you're a cat though,
yeah
Joe.
yeah
I mean, you're a cat. You're not, distance runners are dogs, and not in a bad way. I mean, I love dogs. I mean, they're loyal, they're workers. They'll run 3 miles and then say, "Now what?" And cats don't run 3 miles, and they don't say, "Now what?" either.
yeah
I mean, they would like to get out of practice as soon as possible. They're not looking to see how much they can do. They're looking to compete and go home. So yeah, I think it's just a difference in kids, and I think some kids really do appreciate. It's hard for me and you to understand going out and running intervals and running 70-mile weeks, and good for them. And boy, it takes both types of kid to have a good track team.
yeah yeah. I feel like there are people that is fun for, and I like. If I had people to run it with, the competition would get to me, and I'd be like, okay. But if I do 8x2 by myself, oh no, like it's the worst thing in the world. And I'll like, if I do it now, like I put hurdles out like randomly spaced in the way just to have something to jump over, and like that I could do it, But it's the typical. It's just mentally.
Yep.
It's almost like if you're not having fun, you're not releasing dopamine, and you're not stimulating the nervous system the way that a cat.
And I say all the time as a critique of how stupid modern education is now, where it's so curriculum driven, is that kids are really, really good at what they like.
Yeah.
I mean, they are, when they say kids these days, they cheat, they blah, blah, blah. Well, they wouldn't cheat if they liked what they did.
Yeah.
They really wouldn't. I mean, if they see stuff as meaningful and significant, I mean, kids will read books like crazy if they get to choose the book. But if you make them read Grapes of Wrath, they will hate it.
You're
Right.
talking to you're talking to my soul, Tony. You're talking. I wish you were my teacher in high school. I mean, like that was me. I basically did, and I'll say it. Like I don't care. I'll say it. Is I did the bare minimum amount of work just to get a B. All through high school, all through college. Oh, I didn't even do that good in high school. I just did what I felt I could do to get into college. All through grad school, pretty much. And I read like hell all the stuff I wanted to read outside of that,
Sure.
in terms of sports performance and sports training and all that stuff. And even now too, like I'm a huge reader now, but it's all stuff I like. It's all stuff I
Yeah.
like. Yeah.
Matters.
Yeah.
And if we start flipping the switch would be so easy. We just have to fire all the experts, all the administrators making big money, because you make the further away you get from kids in education, the more money you make. So we'd have to change all that. But if we started trying to make school good for kids, where they would want to go to a chemistry class, all of a sudden everything would change. And it's the same thing in sports. If we make practice significant and fun and competitive and something they look forward to, they're going to be better.
You're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast, brought to you by SimpliFaster. Yeah, it's cool how you're drawing that parallel too. Because I don't think about education that much. I think I will when my daughter goes to school, and it's like, okay,
Sure.
now what's gonna happen? But I always love like drawing the parallels between, because I think sometimes you don't see it in one thing necessarily, but then you highlight it somewhere else. It's like, whoa, like. And I think my last team sport experience, not track, but like was high school basketball, and I wonder what would happen if I looked at that now, or like through your lens, and being purposeful and fun and rank, record, and publish. It's almost like you could almost do like a universal book out of it, really, in some regards. Like that could apply for a lot of things. So
there was a guy that speaks to businesses that have talked to me about tailoring my entire Feed the Cats talk towards businesses, and it sounds weird that, you try to do less and do it better, but maybe that is a good message for everybody, and be purposeful, and, instead of filling 2 hours, if you can get it done in 45 minutes, you do it and go home, so yeah, I think it fits everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the personal development stuff I'm listening to it. They just talk. The common theme is just like living life with the brakes off. Like take the brakes off. Like all the stuff that takes the willpower and all the grind, and not that that stuff isn't bad to do every now and then, but it's like if you're busting that out constantly, like that's so glorified, like in life and in sport.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. Eventually, you will run into a roadblock. Like, and that's why I think it's easy to, like for athletes to peak out in track or swimming or whatever. Like you peak out at particular level because you just like were hyper volumized, and eventually it's just, I think people can be successful. It's just when are you gonna not, when is it gonna hit you, when is
Right.
it gonna get you?
It will hit you too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the grind is not the right religion for people. I mean, instead we need to find things that we love and get really good at it.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
pretty simple.
Oh yeah, I could not agree more. So cool. Well, hey, I think we talk about this one all day, but I'll get on to the next question. I love that stuff though, Tony, man. I just think it makes sense on every level. So, but one of the things I wanted to get to this time is, and I always do this at TFC, so I wanted to bring it up because you wrote a killer article on the TFC blog not too long ago about your experience with the Bigger, Faster, Stronger program. Sprinters and weights, because I think a lot of people would hear you say, we don't lift and this, and be like, oh, well, Tony's clearly never, been through, this himself. He's just at the mercy of all these football coaches with these insane programs. And maybe, maybe are like, but I think there may be certain assumptions people have. So if you could maybe just talk a little about that article and the Bigger, Faster, Stronger, your experience there, and then
Yeah.
how that fits into now.
Yeah. I think the lifting thing is, I am very misunderstood because I think I get kind of hyperbolic sometimes about my I'll post a picture of a big huge bodybuilder with veins sticking out and say how stupid lifting is for sprinters. Like this guy would never win a race in his life, all that kind of stuff. And I realize I'm going rabbit hunting with a buffalo gun a little bit too often there, but I'm trying to make a big point. But I do believe in strength. I just don't think it's the be all end all. And my football players are all going to lift after practice every day, and my non-football players typically don't. And I encourage them to do 100 push-ups a day because I tell them that looking frail is no way to live your life. And so I do like strength. I just don't notice a difference between the kids who lift and they're sprinting and the kids that don't lift and they're sprinting. If I saw a difference, I would change my mind. Now, I'm not telling kids not to lift. I think football players have to because it's a collision sport and you have to have size and you have to not break bones when you get tackled and all that kind of stuff. I do have a problem with a lot of weight room. It's like a religion, the fact that, they posterize everything, champions are made in the weight room, blah, blah, blah. And what I see, people running, this is really going to piss people off, but that's all right. It's okay to piss people off. I see way too many, maybe 80, 90% of all strength and conditioning coaches, not you, of course, but being basically guys that never won a race in their life. And I'm not making fun of them. I'm just saying that they found no joy in sprinting. And they're probably jealous of cats being lazy and, I work hard and they don't, and they score all the touchdowns. And so they found the weight room and they found adaptations and they started looking better and they found meaning and all those things in the weight room. So they got attached. And now they're working in a weight room and telling kids that champions are built in the weight room. And then the other group of guys in your profession are the pretty boys, that are the bodybuilders. And, the godfathers of strength conditioning were pretty boys. They were bodybuilders. I mean, Boyd Epley was a bodybuilder. And so I just see it all the time. These guys talk about functional strength. They talk about being speed-based and all this stuff. And then they'll go pose on a magazine. I mean, literally, they will pose on a magazine and they'll post that in their office or in their weight room. And so there's just a lot of that stuff that goes on. But getting to the BFS stuff, when I was in charge of a weight room about 20 years ago, about the time I started feeding the cats, and basically what I saw in the weight room was that when I look back, we were microdosing. We were lifting 3 times a week. We would lift for 45 minutes. And then we would record on a clipboard a guy's best effort, doing, let's see, I think we had 6 things, like bench, squat, clean, deadlift. And then we did 3 sets of pull-ups and add them all together, 3 sets of dips, add them all together. And we would record, rank, and publish those things. And we would repeat those things every week. And so we would see improvement. Kids really took pride in, hey, coach, I just did, 50 more pounds on my deadlift. This is incredible, stuff like that. So the record, rank, publish thing really, in my mind, kind of came from BFS. And I didn't love everything in the BFS. We definitely tweaked everything. They didn't keep their own book. I'd much rather have everything on my own clipboard, all those things. But we had great success during those years. And looking back, I think we did a lot of things right in the weight room. The big thing is when you microdose, you never ruin the next day. And that is so important to feed the cats, is that nothing we do today can ruin tomorrow's workout. If tomorrow's important, you cannot burn the steak today. You just cannot do it. Now, people say, well, your lactate workouts, I see pictures of lactate war zone and people are in the fetal position and throwing up and they look like they're dead, look like a bomb went off in the middle of your team or something. And they're absolutely right. And I say in our lactate workouts, we have a 48-hour hangover. So we never practice the next day. Or we do it on Friday and take Saturday and Sunday off. So we are not ruining our next day. So when we microdose in the weight room, like we did during my years when I ran it, we would lift, but we would not lift to soreness. And one of the things Charlie Francis said, I don't know if you've heard this, that he said the athletes should never be sore from training.
Yeah,
I've always said I don't want to train a sore athlete, but I've never heard that athletes should never be sore from training. And that to me just screams you got to microdose. You got to realize that that everything's a poison. And that small doses stimulate, and medium doses inhibit, and big doses kill. And so if you start seeing everything like that, you keep your kids happy, healthy, and they're good the next day. You accept small gains. In my presentations now, I tell people that I used to go to a casino with $100, and I'd try to turn it into 1,000. And I'd always lose my ass, that's just not a good way to do it. But every gambler, craps table was always my favorite. And every gambler is up 30 or $40, 30%, whatever, at some time during a session. You just need to walk out when you have a small gain. Gamblers don't like to do that, but that's the way I think you have to coach. You have to accept small gains and not try to do it all every day. And I think, I don't know what percent of coaches try to do everything every day. 80, 90, yeah. It's crazy. So yeah, I also think, I've always said this, I was always afraid to say it publicly, but I heard your conversation with David Weck, and he talked about how natural strength was better than artificial strength.
Yes.
The people that with artificial strength get clunky. I'm like, hell yeah, I've said that for so long. And every time I say that, some meathead weightlifter guy wants to wring my neck, like, no, strength is strength. You cannot differentiate. And then I hear you talk about how you see speed as a combination of joints and fascia and nerves and muscles, and I would throw in dopamine too. And when you start talking like that, all of a sudden muscles are like just one of the 5.
Yeah.
So I think muscles are totally overrated. I think that slow guys run with their muscles more than fast guys. David Weck talked about the bones being slightly bendable, which is like the bow of a bow and arrow. And that's why even though you can get stronger into your 40s, you can't get faster.
Yeah.
It's stronger, but you can't get faster because your bones are set by that time. So when I watch Marcellus run now, I'm just like, he's not just running with his muscles, he's running with a combination of many different
Yes.
things. And if he doubled the size of his muscles, he'd be slower. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And it's the athletes. It's like, if we started to look at it, I mean, it's like we have human nature has this need to just quantify and put a number on every single thing, and like if we could quantify the output of the muscles and the bones and the fascia and the tendons and the electrical system, and it's like you start to see the results of a hypertrophy based, strength program, and this muscle is going out of whack. Like that's why people get hurt a lot of times. The muscle, there's too much muscle in the movement.
Yeah.
There's muscle when it shouldn't be there. It should be tendon, elastic spring, and there's muscle there instead. And it's like,
yes,
you're going so
and
fast.
I've said that before. That's another thing that pisses people off. When you say that, when weight room people say, yeah, we lift weights to prevent injury. Okay, with collision sports, I can understand that.
Yeah.
But then I say, I think the weight room causes a bunch of soft tissue injuries for sprinters. They're like, oh, no way, they're more, and any type of imbalance, maybe if the muscle is too big for the fascia, anything like that can cause something to go wrong. If one muscle is working too hard, yeah. So all that stuff, and you've heard this story before, but being a high jumper, this is important. I had a high jumper named Damon Lampley in 1995 that went over 7 foot 13 different times his senior year. It's one of the interesting things that I learned, though, is that he might have been a great jumper because he missed 28 practices. He missed 28 practices because he started in center field 28 games for the baseball team. And as you know, too much jumping is the worst thing the jumper can do.
Yes.
Well, one time he had just cleared 7 foot and the bar was going to 7-1. And I was talking to him. He said, can you imagine when I finally get some professional coaching at Iowa State, how high I will jump? I said, yeah, you'll probably go like 8.6. Whatever, walked away. And sure enough, he goes full ride scholarship to Iowa State, 5 years, and his PR was 6'11".
Happens all the time.
People say, what happened? Well, first of all, they said, no more basketball. We don't want to risk injury. He was a 10.64 sprinter, and they said, we have enough sprinters. We don't need you on the 4x1. And the third thing is they started doing Olympic lifts with him, and he got really good at cleaning. And, I think the thing that people improve when they clean a lot is their cleans. They just get better at cleaning. And they also put on about 10 pounds. He really looked good, but he wasn't a 7'2" high jumper anymore. So it's just, you just cannot make blanket statements. I'm not making a blanket statement that lifting is wrong, but those people that act like the weight room is the be all end all, they are wrong.
You're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast, brought to you by SimpliFaster. Yeah, I like that you said even the Olympic lifting thing too. Well, and basketball. Yeah, any athlete, especially jumps, but any any event. It seems like high jump seems to be one of the main ones, just maybe because of power to weight. Like any pound you put on, you got to take with you. And it's like, well, Olympic lifting, you're going to put some mass on your spinal erectors and your traps because that has to support the hinging action. And it's. And one thing, it was funny because my PR year, when I jumped my sophomore year, I cleaned 245 and jumped 6'8". The next year, I didn't put as much of an emphasis on cleans. I'm like, it was a lot of different things. I can't really just pin one down, but like I was doing way more sprinting, competitive sprinting too, with like the sprinters. That was a big one. But I wasn't paying as much attention to my cleans. I remember we were maxing out in December. And I was running like 200 pounds was on the bar. And I could barely do it. Like, it's like I had forgotten how. But I jumped 7 foot that year.
So, there you go. Yeah. There you go. So you sure can't draw a direct line. Like the more you clean, the higher you jump. But I think there are meatheads out there that they want to say those things. And that's not right.
Yeah. Just specificity is so... I mean, it's like, and the more I learn about biomechanics, it's cool because it's like, okay, well, like, it's like, oh, this clean isn't helping you. Maybe this clean is, like keep doing it like that. But it's just to draw the distinctions. It's not easy, and everyone just will want to err on the side of more strength and do everything. Like you said, do everything all the time and make sure. It's like with basketball. We play basketball. Like that's a pretty darn good way of trying jumping. So, anyways,
basketball's the best.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Dunking a volleyball was our number one workout for Damon. Yeah, because it's absolutely. So damn aggressive. And as soon as he get a little tired, it's okay, you're done. He might dunk 8 times and go home. Yeah. That's a great workout for a high school or any type of high jumper.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, playing basketball. Back when I was coaching at Wilmington College, we had a guy who he eventually won nationals. But it's like, and I've seen this happen enough times where like in Division 3, where it's not like Division 1 where it's like you are married to your sport, like, which is kind of like, I mean, it is what it is. But like Division 3, you get a lot of still multi-sport. We had a basketball guy who basically could just roll off the basketball court and just be getting. I mean, his technique wasn't very good, but the highest he was jumping was it's always right after basketball season.
For sure.
And
always. Yeah. And they'll go out in the first meet and go 6'8", and they'll go 6'2" at the end of the year.
Yeah, all the time.
They jump too much. They get overcoached, and and they might even be doing 10 times 200.
Yeah. It's okay. Come do track. Let's run 8 or 10 200s. Let's just do high jumping, and that's the only kind of jumping you're doing. And let's lift weights. And it's like, it's like you can't, and that's why you jump 6'2" at the end. And to me, that's always just been this awesome experiment in motor learning and variability, different types of jumps and play and fun and elasticity. I mean, I would, I think there's a time and place for every training modality, but it's like as soon as you throw fun and play out the window, like, yeah, the high jumper at Wilmington, I would let him play. He was still like, it's like, oh, it's basketball. He needs to do open gym a couple times a week. I was like, yeah, go play, dude. Like, I want you to play. Like, I want you to do this. Agree. And I think it worked out pretty well for him. Eventually won a national championship after I left. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing for me, but he was a beast. And I think he had a really good experience with that. So anyways, I like something you said. I wanted to go back too. You said you can't go through life frail, right? Like even if you don't lift, like do 100 push-ups, right? And I mean, I don't want to get, I guess, into a talk about like, this lift and that lift. I mean, we all know, I think, the flaws of like a powerlifting max-driven system, and it does have shortcomings with sprinters and cats, especially elite sprinters for sure. But I do love that you can't go through life frail, because I've realized no matter who I'm coaching, swimmers, track, whatever, just confidence and just feeling strong and looking at yourself in the mirror and having that confidence is like, it's just a massive part of it. You cannot like dismiss that whatsoever. I like that term that you said there.
Yeah. I mean, I with my freshman football team every year, I would tell them on the first day, I'd say, I want you to do 100 push-ups a day for 100 days. And I'd say, how many are you going to do that? They all raise their hand. Like, well, that's bullshit. About 5 of you are going to rate. Only about 5 of you are going to do it. But for those 5 who will do it, I'm glad I just said this. If you do 100 push-ups a day for 100 days, you will change your life. You will feel different. And I think maybe 10 of them probably did it every year because I called them out on it. And they'd come and tell me, Coach, it's unbelievable how much stronger I am, how much better I feel. And who knows, maybe there's a hormonal effect to that's important in growth and everything. So yeah, I am not against strength at all.
Yeah. I think it's just easy to, and to create the stories and the context that help people see the shortcoming of things, like a bodybuilding driven program for athletes, like it's important to draw those. What you're saying actually reminded me of a story. I feel like I learn a lot of things from the swim world these days, just because that's where I spend a lot of my time in the physical prep with that. And there was, I don't work with this guy. I don't coach him. I just know of his story, but there's a system coming up in swimming now. It's kind of like, I guess, feed the cats in swimming. It's called USRPT, or US race pace training, whereas swimming is a huge endurance, traditional, like insane amounts of, it would make the worst, it would make Clyde Hart's most crazy workout look like a little kitten workout.
I've heard it's like Clyde Hart on steroids.
It is like traditionally, like, and it's good to see a lot of progressive programs who are changing that paradigm. And I think that's a big reason we're seeing a lot, the swim records are getting broken really fast. And I don't know if swimming had the same steroid deal in the 80s as track or whatever, but that's kind of, anyway, so there's a program that's kind of taking that on, like you need to train at your race pace, but it's like, it's really early, and I think it has a lot of kinks to be worked out, or so I hear, because it's like, it's just kind of getting this down. But one of the big tenets is no weightlifting. So I don't even know if there's any like dry land. Like it's like no weightlifting, no dry land, everything is race pace. They're trying to kind of carve out this system in swimming. And the poster boy for this is a guy named Michael Andrew, who went pro at like age 16. And swimmers mature, or they get fast younger, and so he got offered all this pro stuff. And so he didn't go to college. And so I can't say I know 100% his training, but last year was his total breakout year. So he, at the national championships, just kicked ass. I mean, he threw down at about age 18, 19. He's like, oh yeah, this is the first year I started doing dry land. He's like, I just started doing some push-ups and stuff. And it's like, you don't want to be able to block so skinny, like, you'd imagine just like the psychology of that, right? Like it's, I was thinking, it's like, yeah, I don't know his training. I'm not inside that program, but I would be willing to bet that just doing push-ups and getting strong and feeling stronger, and the basic adaptations, the mental adaptations, played a big role in what he was doing. So I thought it was kind of cool what you said there. Awesome. So bigger, faster, stronger, though. So this is one of the things I really wanted to get to. You were talking about that idea of constant PRs. And in the bigger, faster, stronger program, it's like set up so that you can set a PR all the time. You know, you set your 10 rep PR, your 8 rep PR, your 6, whatever PR you did. And you were talking about doing that a little bit more with sprinting, on the sprinting side of things, and how you set up Feed the Cats. And if you'd like to share a little bit about that and your recent experience there.
Yeah, in the article, I talked about my BFS things, and for people who don't know what BFS did, I didn't copy this exactly, but it's brilliant. They did four different weeks, and then they would redo that 4-week cycle. And so 4 weeks after you benched, you would PR again, and then you'd do a towel bench where you put a towel on your chest. You wouldn't have to go down as far, and you'd PR on that. And so kids were breaking records, like, hey, you could break like 17 records a week or something. It was crazy. And that kind of coincided with me seeing a local legend here. He's in the Hall of Fame, a guy named Alcarius from North Central College. Yeah. He's a distance coach. And I think the first time I ever heard the term PR was from Alcarius, who had a slogan, a motto, like he'd say, "Run for fun in PRs." That's what they did. And I started, I think then it's about 25 years ago, I started valuing the whole PR thing, and that way you can reward all your kids. So now what I've done is kind of combine, both things, the Alcarius thing and the BFS thing. So we do like 7 different metrics now, and we call it the speed cycle. One metric is we run the 40-yard dash. We're timing the 40, obviously, and we do that. The 40 is so important. Obviously, you have the acceleration phase, and you also have a max speed phase. So it's a really good run, but you also really connect with the football program. And any track program that does not connect with the football program is a bad track program. So we do the 40, but we also time the final 10 meters with free lap. So we're getting that max speed metric as well. And we're also teaching people, when we do that, to really run through the finish line instead of to the finish line. Those kids are going at absolutely their top speed when they cross the finish line, which track coaches constantly harp about. I don't have to, because we do it. We do a 10-yard fly. And everybody's wanting to know all the time, like, what's the run in? And it's a no-brainer to me. You are working max speed. So if you limit the run in, then you're working on acceleration. Max speed is the holy grail. Acceleration is dependent on max speed. The faster your max speed, the faster your acceleration. So everything has to be about max speed. So we do a 10-yard fly, easily measured, because those are the boy hurdle marks on a track. So, Marcellus goes about 35-meter run in. I'd say the average track sprinter needs only about 25 to 30. Usain Bolt would probably need 45. The faster you are, the more run-in you require to get to top speed. And then we do a 20-yard competition fly, where we put free lap chips on the waistband of 2 guys. We don't have to say go or anything. They just do a big run-in, and they are competing through those 2 cones. That's the only time, by the way, that we ever run competitive. All of our other runs, all of them are always solo. And I think that's important, because I think if you compete too much, kids are thinking about competition instead of mechanics, or I think you got to focus on yourself to be a good sprinter. We compete enough. And then we do a gauntlet 40, where we have everybody line the track and raise hell, and our kids run through a gauntlet of cheering friends. And we time that, and we only do the gauntlet a couple times a year, but when we do, we average between 60 and 65% PRs. Now, you can't do that every day, because then you'd lose the effect. But encouragement and love and excitement has a lot to do with performance. I think everybody kind of knew that. but I have the data that shows it absolutely freaky improves performance. The other two we do are not sub-max. We do a 15-yard block start into a 10-yard fly. Free lap cones on the first and second boys hurdle mark, and we're working on block starts. And the faster you are through that 10-meter fly, we assume that the guy is getting out of the blocks pretty well. We also video every time we come out of the blocks. And then the last thing we do is something I got from a coach in Ohio, where we do a 10-meter run in to a 20-meter exchange zone, because of the specificity of a relay guy, 4x1, 4x2, getting exactly 10 meters to get to as good a speed as he possibly can, and hopefully be totally maxed out by the time he gets the baton late in the zone. So we're both of those last two though, they may be going max speed at the end, but we're not truly measuring a max speed because they are not quite there yet, because we've limited the run in. But we think both of those are kind of track specific, and we like those as well.
Yeah, I'd seen you do the 10 meter, or the 20 with the 10 meter in, and I was kind of wondering like where that came from. But yeah, the relay start makes perfect sense. Like I understand that.
And you know, a lot of times coaches do not work with their kids on driving out of that position. You know, that is absolutely a push drive phase, getting into the zone. And you know, I watch so many poorly coached girls teams where they like tippy toe for 10 meters. And you don't tippy toe. I mean, you got to be 45 degrees and just seeing the track and drive. And so instead of just talking about it, we actually do it and then measure it. And with those 7 metrics, we get to break records all the time. And we celebrate that. What's amazing is not only do my kids never forget their spikes. I remember a Jamaican coach, I saw Maurice Wilson, I think it was his name, was so proud that all the young kids in Jamaica and track are carrying water bottles. You know, that's great. You know, that's something you really want. Well, all my kids carry spikes. You know, they have spikes on their backpack going from class to class, because they never want to forget their spikes, because we measure things. And, you know, they don't want to be run the slowest time on the team because they got their soft shoes on. They always want to have their spikes. So yeah, it's all about setting records, and every single time our kids go through, whether it's a fly or whatever, they'll either curse or celebrate. That's what cats do. They care, you know, and I think people that visit me and see that happening, they start to see why it's so powerful to time kids in practice.
You're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast, brought to you by SimpliFaster. Yeah, it ignites the mind, and it makes the whole athlete. You know, you talk about like the love and the community, and like, you know, we don't exist in isolation. Like athletes aren't, you know, machines that are just, you know, input training, output results. Like there's other very powerful factors, and that's one thing I really learned from you. And it's almost like that environment in the weight room too, you know, like where you see the football team and everyone's around the guy maxing out, and, you know, big, you know, it's like, what if we took all that emotional energy for a lift and put it into a sprint? Like that'd be pretty cool. That's what you're doing with the gauntlet. Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Exactly. The only thing we're not doing, we're not slapping the kid in the face.
Oh.
In that squat. That was my favorite video from a couple of years ago.
Is
the
that
old face slap to motivate that kid to squat more. Enough said about weight rooms.
Oh, I picture, I can see it in my head. It's that is definitely playing in my head right now. It's like, it was like, where's the coach? I don't even know if I saw any coaches. It looked like it was just a bunch of kids. Like it was like Lord of the Flies or something. It just like slapped.
What was crazy though is that was on some major website.
Yeah, it was a good team too.
Like it was the most real, quote unquote, the most real weight room video of the year. Acting like this is why they're so great, is because they have this type of culture in the weight room, and they're actually showing one kid slapping another kid during a squat. And it just, yeah. And that's why I guess I'm a sprint coach.
Yeah. That's it. That quote will be in the show notes for sure there, Tony. One thing you said, I like this, is, and you've talked about this a lot in TFC, and it's like I've heard it, but maybe through some years of digesting. I feel like it takes me a few years to digest some ideas sometimes, but like competing versus non-competing in practice, right? Like I know there's track and field constructs where there's a lot of competing, and then you're talking about running a lot of solo stuff, and it makes me think about even my own like upbringing in track. The best years I would do competitive acceleration from like a variety of starting positions once or twice a week, and then everything else is pretty much on my own, but like it's almost like there's a ratio, like because if it's always competitive, one of the things you said that will forever stick out to me is the idea of the 10-meter fly or 10-yard fly. Like your athletes, it's almost like you said. It's almost like you could see them trying things. Like you could see in their minds like they're trying something new to run a little bit faster. And it's like not only is there cues, but they're like owning that process themselves. Like they're taking it themselves to own the process to get faster. And it's almost like when you're competing, you can't really own that process of, okay, what's going to work this time, what's not going to work this time. And like I see it in swimming a lot, because swimmers spend a lot of time looking at the black line at the bottom of the pool and not being social, and if you're locked in, it's like, and you can tell they've spent a lot of time like going over different parts of their stroke. How does this part feel? How does that part feel? And it's like just that time by yourself, it's so just like the different ratios, like competitive and then time by yourself to process.
Yep.
It finally made sense to me, is what I'm trying to say.
And I think you can do both, because see, if you're timing a kid, they will be competitive against their time.
Yeah.
So they're not. And one of the great things about running solo is that a kid never gets beat.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Getting beat is not a performance enhancer. I mean, all these people say, yeah, getting beat motivated me. Bullshit. Motivation comes. I don't know if you read the book Motivation Myth by Jeff Hayden, but basically he says that we don't get motivated and then do great things. Instead, we start something and we start to get some positive feedback. Some good things happen, and we get the dopamine hit.
Yes.
And that's what creates the motivation. So that has to happen first. And when you take losing away from a kid in training, but still keep it competitive, and like you say, there's not many things you can try to do different. You can pick up your knees a little higher. You can increase your stride, decrease your stride. You can loosen up your face, or you can be more technical with your arms. There's not a whole lot of things, but my kids try them all. They try a longer. I heard somebody say the other day that all their kids try to start running fast when they hit the cone. And well, my kids, we time so much that my kids know that you want to get back as far as you can without being tired by the time you get there. So all those things start to almost coach yourself. And one of my favorite quotes, of course, is that a great teacher teaches himself out of a job. That the kids start learning how to build their own house.
Yeah.
And then they thrive.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. Yeah. Sorry, I'm so excited, like interrupted you. I was gonna say, yeah, it's like the best. It's almost like there's that moment a coach gets away from, this is the athlete I built, to the athlete that I gave you the environment. I helped give you the environment to allow you, the thing that was awesome inside of you, manifests itself. Well, I taught you to. That's always something that I see that across the board with awesome coaches, and so it's cool to hear you say the same thing. It's just like this resonating factor. So I feel like I need to, let's see. I need to ask you. And that was the. What you said there about getting beat, like that reminded me too of it was a research or something I saw with people who watch sports. They have their pro sports team. Like, I love the Ohio State Buckeyes. I love this team. And if your team loses, your dopamine goes down, and I think your testosterone goes down. Like,
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why I don't watch pro sports too, because I don't want to deal with that wave. Like, let other stuff maybe dictate that. I remember, like, when I was in college, there was a lot of Ohio State fans where I was. I'm from Wisconsin, but like some people would be bummed out like all day. Like all day they would just be like dragging around, like, because if the Buckeyes lost, it was like
it's like, yeah, and that's no way to live.
Yeah, no, I was being me. I was such a button pusher. I would just try to like poke at them too. I was kind of torturous, like if their team lost. But I could see that totally, in getting beat. I mean, I think, I think maybe for some people on some level, maybe it could be, but I can definitely see, it happens enough times, and you just like, I can definitely see that edge of it for sure. It's just, you're always looking at psychology in a different way, right? Like, So yeah, I figure I should probably wrap this up with just one more chat or one more question for you. And one of the things you've always done that's intrigued me is the X Factor workouts, and that's where like that variety comes in. That variety kind of plyometric style day. Anything recently that you've become a fan of? You notice any sort of like transfer or fun aspect too that you're kind of sticking with? Any themes that are commonly sticking with you at a X Factor?
Well, I mean, I think that, first of all, our X Factor stuff, I tell people that basically we feel like we can only sprint 2 or 3 times a week, no more than that. I used to think 3 or 4. Now I'm thinking 2 or 3. A quarter I think thinks more like 2. And and so I feel like if we only practice 2 or 3 times a week, people would talk more than they already talk. We already go home after a 40-minute workout, and our distance kids are just getting done with their warm up at that time. And so it's hard enough to be a Feed the Cats program. But so we feel like, let's say we sprint on Monday and Wednesday, we need to do something on Tuesday and Thursday. But we don't want to sprint, but we don't want to waste time. And we want to do something that we might have a hunch that will help sprinters. And there's nothing that we do that I can say for sure makes you faster. But I think there's 3 things you can do in practice to get faster. And it's max speed, mechanics, and then jumping. And so any type of jumping is going to be a part of every X Factor workout, whether it's assisted plyos. I just learned a thing where Jamie Moyer talked about doing assisted plyos with 2 guys so that you could actually do one-legged cycles, which is really a great, cool idea. So that's something new, and that happens to people when we invite people that are rebel talents to the Track Football Consortium to speak. Basically, people who go to the consortium go home with a catalog of X Factor drills, because we have such out of the box thinkers and people who train kids in hallways and things like that. So I think wickets are just getting. I mean, that's not anything new, but I think that for a guy that doesn't know anything about sprinting, that I could show him what we do in wickets and almost coaches sprinters for you. We don't do them the same way as other people do because we go really, really fast. And we do funky things where we take away the arms and then put them back in the last rep. But basically just, we got to bounce every day. We got to bounce. We got to absorb force. We got to do wickets often. There's just constantly, we're doing more Bosch drills, the balancy type things, lifting up to a platform, getting way up on the toe. I need to start doing more ankle rocker stuff. And here are my best friends, Chris Corfist, and he's like the world expert on ankles and toes and things. And we don't do anything at all on that. That's just embarrassing. I'm just lazy. I need to start, and that's the perfect X Factor stuff. No wear and tear on the body. You're doing like toe curls. It's easy. So no, it's just we're always looking for new stuff, and we'll always have kind of a set of things that there will never be a week go by where we don't do those things once. But yeah, it's a short workout, 40 minutes, very minimum dose, and because we're so minimum dose, I told somebody the other day that we don't have any foot problems, knee problems, hip problems. We have no shin problems. Never had a hip flexor problem. I think maybe the no hip flexor problem comes from the fact that we don't do any ab work, no core, no planks. I really think that whoever decided that planks were something that everybody should do, needs to maybe wonder if that's causing hip flexor problems, because we don't do any at all and we have no hip flexor problems. That's not scientific. That's just something that I've noticed. So yeah, X Factor will always be and the thing about having a sprint day, X Factor day, and then lactate days during the season, not very many of them, is that if you visit a practice, you're going to see one of those 3 types of practices. The categorizing practices in those 3 allow me to program and sequence very simply. So, okay, we're going to do a lactate workout on Monday because we have a meet on Saturday. We're going to take Tuesday off. Okay, now we're going to have a speed day, next day, and a speed. So anyway, we're able to really sequence things easily by dividing our practices up like that.
Awesome stuff, Tony. One really quick question before our time's up, and that's well, the kind of applying that bigger, faster, stronger program throughout the late fall. What's your take on that? Like, do you feel like that was really beneficial, like to sprinting? Like, do you feel like that was something that really is going to pay dividends, like compared to kind of what you've done in the past, like mixing it up, PRing more often? Like, what was your take on how that shook out?
I think I don't know. I think that anytime kids have encouraging things going on, like we talked about Jeff Hayden's motivation myth and all that stuff, anytime you get that hit of dopamine, that hit of dopamine, and of course we don't get enough dopamine in the cold weather states, like you guys are dopamine addicts out in California. But no, we live in cloudy, cold. It's going to be minus 22 real on Wednesday. Yeah, we're going to set records. It's going to be minus 55 wind chill 2 days in a row. So yeah, we don't get much dopamine on those days.
Low dopamine.
So the only way we can get dopamine is by getting sleep and having, accomplishing small tasks. That we were successful in something. We win something, and every time a kid sets a PR, that's a little win. That's a little dopamine, and dopamine, as you know, allows you to move your limbs faster and gives you reckless confidence, two things that make sprinters fast.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'll definitely have to keep an eye on how you guys are doing this season, follow up with you, and I just think how you're integrating every element into the training equation, not just the workouts, and obviously just not being appropriate with your workloads is doing tremendous things, but just everything else you put into it too. I think we can learn an awful lot about, and then also even other transferring that even to life itself. So
Cool.
That's all the time I think we got for today. But Tony, thank you so much for being on again, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. Love it.
Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Appreciate you guys listening, and it is always so good talking to Tony. Glad we brought him back on, and just what a legend to learn from. And I think no matter what coach you are, whether it's track, strength and conditioning, sports performance, you're a team sport coach, a parent, whatever, there is a lot of gold here that is transferable to all elements of sport and life. Okay. Also, our sponsor, SimpliFaster.com, suppliers of high-end training technology, amazing blog, products, service, and they're doing an awesome job. So please support them as they have been an awesome sponsor for us. If you enjoyed the podcast, head on over to Stitcher, iTunes, leave us a rating or review, and we will see you all next week. Have a good one.